Welcome to another episode of the Wall Street Bets podcast, where we talk about decentralized finance and democratizing DeFi to make it more accessible to everyone. I'm Venus DeMille, and today we'll be joined by Piers Ridyard, CEO of RDX Works, a Layer 1 DeFi protocol. But first, a major project update in the weekly news bulletin. So the WSB token has launched on OKEx Exchange, which saw the WSB token price rise over 200% overnight. In addition to the Binance Smart Chain, we're also now on Ethereum and trading on SushiSwap, as well as P Network. This indicates a rather monstrous inflow of new investors to the WSB community, and we look forward to welcoming them all into the movement. In market news, Bitcoin and stocks bounced back after the Fed signals interest rate hikes. In retail news, is crypto the new stocking stuffer? Trading app Robinhood has announced that its users will be able to gift friends and family crypto over the holiday season. Ethereum is outperforming Bitcoin as the latter becomes less attractive as an inflation hedge in the face of the Federal Reserve's hawkishness going into 2022, said Galaxy Digital CEO Mike Novogratz in an interview on Wednesday. And in pop culture, a rare Whitney Houston NFT track sold for $999,000 via the eco-friendly non-fungible music platform OneOf. Also in pop culture, as reported in Decrypt, Roman Coppola's Decentralized Pictures is shaking up the film industry with crypto in the form of a nonprofit foundation. Built on a slightly tweaked version of the Tezos blockchain, Decentralized Pictures platform invites filmmakers to submit movie pitches, paying a submission fee in the project's native crypto token film. And in sports news, NBA and Brooklyn Nets star Kevin Durant has inked a fresh deal with crypto exchange Coinbase to appear as a face of the brand, per Bloomberg. In turn, Coinbase will run cryptocurrency ads and sponsored content on Boardroom, Durant's sports website, and donate to Durant's charitable foundation to support the youth. Durant was an early Coinbase investor in 2017 through 35 Ventures, his investment fund with his manager, Rich Kleiman, but this new deal makes him a public ambassador. For more on weekly news, go to WSBDApp YouTube channel. And now to welcome Piers Ridyard. Piers is a serial entrepreneur and the CEO of RDX, a Layer 1 protocol for the DeFi industry. Piers leads the company's mission to transform decentralized finance with secure, scalable solutions. He graduated from the University of Manchester and the UK's University of Law. Early in his career, Piers worked at the JP Morgan bond desk. In 2015, he began focusing on Ethereum and the potential for smart contracts. He launched Radix, a blockchain company serving the insurance industry, which was accepted to Y Combinator in 2017 and acquired soon after. He joined Radix in late 2017 after meeting the company's founder, Dan Hughes. Piers is based in London. Welcome, Piers.
Great to be here. So just a quick note. RDX Works is the developer behind the Layer 1 protocol, the public network Radix. So Radix is a public decentralized ledger that RDX Works is working on and is a developer for. But Radix is the Layer 1 protocol, name of the Layer 1 protocol.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying. Let's talk about the news this morning. Are there any surprises for you?
I mean, the film network seems really interesting. Like one of the film industry is such a hits business, but it's like this thing that has been the whole financing of has sort of been behind this very complicated wall that very few people actually get access to, and the idea of being able to help finance a movie that you think would be really interesting, I think is going to be huge. I think that's going to be awesome to see. You know, it's the kind of thing that a crowd of people that want something to be successful can help, catalyze that into being a cult classic or something like that. So like getting your fan base early and then invested in the success of a future movie, that seems like that could be really interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for those thoughts. I think what's cool is I've seen some kind of weird projects circulating that are similar of, how people that are sort of on the fringe of film might figure out how to raise money for films. I think to see bigger names come into this and people who, have a lot of skin in the game and a lot of legacy who recognize how insular it is and are interested in opening it up, as you say, right, signals some real movement. And I think when you have that coming up with, GameFi and all of these more sort of pop culture driven projects, coming from real talent, it's sort of signaling what the next layer of this might be.
Right. And then the potential overlap with NFTs is huge, like this idea, like imagine if they made every single frame of the movie into its own NFT, and then you could like own your favorite frame of the movie, and then you could trade that. And if you invested in it, you get like a random set of those frames, and then you can trade them. And like that, the idea of like being able to get into the premiere if you have the NFT, all of this kind of stuff that like movie industry is cool and people want access to that cool. And I think that sort of like that the potential there is really interesting. I don't know how much they're going to double click on that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. And I'm thrilled to see that there are things that also everyday people can connect to, because sometimes it's hard to connect to the tech itself if you're not already in the blockchain space.
Right.
But you have been in the blockchain space for some time now.
Yeah, so like I got my start when my friend messaged me when the Ethereum token sale was ongoing, and was like, hey, can you have a look at this? Can you, and so that was like 2014.
That was a lucky moment.
And they were like, hey, can you look at this? This might be interesting. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this looks like a scam. Like there's no way you should buy this.
Oh no.
And so he didn't buy anything.
Oh no.
In the original token sale, but it's fine. We then decided once it went up and live, he was like, no, it's definitely a real thing. I was like, okay, cool. And so we started mining Ethereum on the Genesis block of Ethereum. And so we mined, we were like right back then we were mining sequential blocks, and we were literally mining sequential blocks on some like hardware we had in one of our rooms. It was amazing. And that was like my very first start into crypto. So 2015 was when I got into it a bit more seriously and started building mining rigs, and then really got like interested in the concept of decentralized autonomous organizations, which was like, it got really hot in 2015. And then it kind of cooled a little bit because of the DAO hack in I think that was 2016. Mm-hmm. And so then DAO sort of like went underground for a bit, and they're sort of coming back up again now. But yeah, like all of these ideas about this concept of a leaderless organization where you could have a entity on ledger that controlled funds, and then you could have governance around how those funds were operated. That was stuff that like got me excited back in 2015. And that was like a lot of the stuff that people were getting excited about. The concept of like even all the way up to like the possibility of digital nations and all that kind of stuff. So that was my start in crypto. And then I was like, okay, well that's cool, but like let's start building some like stuff that's a little bit more easy to get your hands around. Like digital nations, cool, but like let's start a little smaller. And so that's where Shawmatics and stuff like that came out of.
Amazing. Was there any part of you, because you had your start in finance? Was there any part of you that was disillusioned with that leading into this transition?
That's one of those leading questions where you just so want me to say yes. No. So like, no, it was like finance. I found finance boring for a completely different reason. I found finance boring because so I originally went to university to do aerospace engineering, and I went to university to do aerospace engineering because I love the idea of building cool things. Right. I just like the idea of like, get to design shit that matters. Right. Yeah. And that seems cool. And then I got to university and I was like, this is basically just lots and lots and lots of optimization problems. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm not like someone who, we've got some amazing people on the RDX team, and like, some of those people love the optimization side of things and are just like very good at it, and it's the way that they're partly how their brain works. My brain doesn't work like that. The optimization of something isn't the exciting thing for me. It's the creation of the concept, the conceptual nature of something in the first place. And it was the same thing that I found with finance. Like I was like, where does someone go who's not like a coder? Who's like, I want to do something that's important and like that I can probably make a load of money from. Finance is probably where you sort of like look to, and I kind of like the competitive nature of it. Like, if you get into finance, if you get into one of the bulge bracket banks, then you're making it. Right. And then when I got there, it just found that it was really just some of the smartest people I'd ever met solving some of the most boring problems you can possibly come across, which is like the optimization of the Z spread over like government bonds. And it was like discussions of like 0.025% movement in the expectation of the Z spread in the next week. And I was like, I literally couldn't care less about this. I just can't. And so there was this combination of it feeling like a huge waste of talent, right? Like investment banking draws in like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, draws in some of the smartest people in the world from some of the best universities and like just wastes them on nothing, on just like this like very, very uninventive, productive in many ways for society work. So I wasn't disillusioned by the finance industry. I was sort of just like bored by it. And then like feeling a bit disappointed about the people that I met and the things that they were doing. That, you know, you'd meet people who literally were double firsts from Cambridge who in biology, and they're working on the bond desk. It's like you could be a Nobel Peace Prize winning like biologist doing something, but you've been sucked into this because anyway.
Right.
So that made me go meh. And then but like it was also incredibly important for my learning and development to get to the point where, you know, that I have this weird overlapping of skills that means that DeFi feels really brilliant because it's so cutting edge and there's so much opportunity for people to create amazing things. Yeah. And there's so much opportunity for newness. Like it's not an optimization problem. It's like frontier, like gold rush territory. Let's build new things. Let's imagine new worlds. Let's imagine new empires. And that's exciting. And that's why I love DeFi. But it does draw in like finance fundamentals. It does draw in like, you know, computer hardware, or like Ethereum mining and like all that kind of stuff. And you know, then my other bit, law, like regulation and law is just like everything it touches everything, whether we want it to or not. Like it all affects how we make decisions in this space. So like, it's just, I find it so exciting.
Yeah, it's, you know, you're of a very special tribe as well of people who come from, you know, deeply formal backgrounds between finance and law and have moved into this space that others still think is very speculative. You know, I mean, even what Elizabeth Warren just made some deeply uninformed comment about, you know, DeFi being dangerous. And so I love hearing this from people who come from those more formal backgrounds, understand the law, understand financial instruments, and have made the full transition. You know, I think that's a really, it's good for the space. It's healthy. It's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, like, and we're going to see more and more of it. Like I literally just interviewed someone on my podcast, the DeFi Download, who had just come from like a traditional startup. I think he worked for, you know, one of the unicorns out in San Francisco building products for them. But his background also included finance, and like he's come across to DeFi, and like his product's great. Really good product and like well thought out, user experience as like the number one concept in it, like really thought through like the user path through the use of the product, and like all of this stuff is really important. Like what we got is the crypto industry was founded by a combination of cypherpunks, people who have a set of like beliefs about how they want the world to be, and a set of people whose like risk profile is completely off the charts. Right. And so like that risk profile meant that you were kind of insane if you got into Bitcoin in 2008, 2009, and you were kind of like still a little bit crazy if you got into Ethereum in 2015. But now we're getting to the point where things are maturing a bit more. Like it's it's not as insane as it was to just custody your own token, like to even work out where to keep your tokens as it was in 2010, where you could like throw out your hard drive and suddenly lose all of your Bitcoin. Like there's a few more solutions
people did
now. Yeah, so many people. And like, I think there's some estimate about like something like 15% of all Bitcoin is lost.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Anytime I interview someone who was in Bitcoin pre-2017, there's a horror story.
Yeah.
And I would love to actually sort of cobble those all together in some kind of interesting and inspired way to also show the resilience. Because the thing that I love about the people who lost the most are the ones that didn't quit. Those are the ones that are still here and still building. And you'd think that, losing $1 million would be the thing that would like send you running. But in fact, it seems like people actually, the more sort of trials they go through and the more rites of passage, the stronger their conviction in the space.
It's funny. Like I took, like in many things, I just never cashed out. Like I'm your typical, like, never sold. And it's not because I'm like diamond hands. It's just because I think that, like, if you believe in something and you believe it's early, then why sell, right?
Right.
And like that's kind of like the combination of things for me. But like sometimes I'll look at like my portfolio and it doesn't feel like real money. Like if it disappeared one day, I wouldn't be like, oh, I've lost all of this money. I'd be like, well, I never really made, like, it's sort of like the industry just sort of went, and you're like, oh, that's a lot of money, but like, it's not real until you sell it and never sell. So, this is the secret. But yeah, you're right. Everyone's got a horror story, even from the Ethereum days. But like, this is how we learn. This is how we learn as an industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point earlier about the people that you met during finance, I mean, could you find a more colorful cast of characters than the people you meet in blockchain?
No.
I mean, it really is.
But that's what kept me there. Like it was the moment I went to a meetup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was the moment I went to a meetup and I was like, these people are so interesting. Like it's not, they go one further. You got your armchair philosophers, right? They're like, who you normally meet are your armchair philosophers, the people who speculate about how the world should be. And then you go to these meetups and they're like, no, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And you look at it and go, that's absolutely bad. Crazy, but like cool. And like some of those things work, but like all of the people there, they have a default towards action as well, and that's intoxicating.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you're right, the range of characters are mad.
It's incredible. I mean, it's really incredible. It's like you literally feel like you have run off with the circus at certain moments, but it's a circus that you want to run off with and be a part of.
I still remember. I don't know if you were you at the. I think it was Consensus 2017 in New York, where Anthony DeLorean did rented an entire yacht and then got, I think it was like 30% of the entire Consensus crowd went to Consensus, as in the conference, not the company. Okay. Went to the yacht, and then everyone's ticket was a wristband that had LED lights in it. And you walked onto the yacht and it started flashing. And then at the end of the night, they slowly went off. And then the last three people that still had flashing wristbands, when the yacht arrived back, was given the choice of having a Lamborghini, a Aston Martin, or like, I think it was Lamborghini, Aston Martin, and a BMW or something like that. And they were just sat in the docks, and then they just handed over the keys and they drove off. Like, it's
oh my God,
insane.
That just gave me chills, not because I want a Lamborghini so much, but because just the surprise of that and like the absurdity. But like, that's wonderful. So, and I guess you were not one of the last three.
I was not one of the last people, unfortunately. No, that would have been great, but no. Yeah. But I still remember it as that moment, a moment in crypto history where it's just like, this industry is a little bit crazy, and just in a way that it, like, the investment banking world, that person would probably buy that car and turn up at the thing. But then in the crypto world, it's like, no, the community matters. Like everything matters as a basis of all of us doing stuff together. So I'm going to give this stuff away rather than like keep it for myself. Like Anthony DeLorean is still active investor in the space, but like certainly it just, the amount of money that has suddenly appeared in the industry is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it really is. And I feel like I'm surprised at how little sort of major news coverage that gets of the fact that there actually is this new class of wealth that has come almost entirely from crypto. And that, again, like we're used to legacy wealth being, mostly people from the finance world or people from the generational wealth world, and, a handful of entrepreneurs and some tech CEOs. But it's a very specific sort of composition of people that have a lot in common, quite frankly, and it's interesting when you have this new class of wealth that are, a lot of interesting people that might not have anything in common, might have very little in common in terms of their background, their age, their education, their skill sets. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that influences and transforms society.
Yeah, I mean, like, and if it will, right? Like, I don't know where. Like, we've had generations of like people who got very wealthy by sort of being lucky. Like, there's, I don't think I got. I can't say that I was like really smart to invest in Ethereum and buy my tokens. I just got like caught up in the community and I got excited by it, and I held on to my tokens that I got. Like, if you go back to the .com days, there are people who also, bought a domain that they then sold for like $1 million and made loads of money or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not it's going to change society. It's an interesting question. I think that there is going to be a massive there's going to be a massive movement of wealth. There always is when you have a disruptive technology where lots of people have new opportunities to become wealthy by building new things. Part of the reason that I find the DeFi space so interesting is there are, like, if we thought the internet was huge and we think like Facebook and Google and Twitter are huge, like those things are going to pale into significance against what can be built on like public decentralized ledgers like Radix. If you're a DeFi developer, if you're a DeFi builder, the next Googles of finance, the next Twitters of finance are going to be built on places like Radix, and are going to be built by people who are starting today. Like the world is uncharted at this point. That's going to be amazing. That's going to be a huge transfer. That's going to be a huge additional value that is created for society. And there's going to be a transfer of wealth from established monopolistic players or duopolistic players in the traditional finance space. And there's going to be a movement of capital to these new places. But like, is that going to change? Are those people going to change society? I don't know. Is the technology going to change society? Maybe.
Well, there was an interesting thing that came out of, there were a lot of interesting things that came out of Art Basel this year as this sort of incumbent institution as far as art fairs go. One is that there were 3 times as many sales this year as in previous years. And the prognostication is that most of those were coming from people who had become wealthy from NFTs that had never been to an art fair before, and were just so.
And they're like, "Wow, this is so cheap! I'll buy all of this. This is great."
No, exactly. Like they walked in, and like the pricing didn't matter because it was so insignificant compared to the pricing that they've been exposed to. They're relatively. They're completely new to the art world, relatively new to the concept of owning art. And many of them have made some real funny money off,
they're like, I can buy a physical painting for $100,000 where I own this little JPEG of a CryptoPunk and it's 3 million. That's a bargain. I'm getting that. Yeah,
exactly. So I would say it's actually been interestingly like healthy for the traditional art world that you have these cashed up NFT investors who really aren't trying to negotiate anything. They're just walking in and they're saying, man, I think that's cool. I like it. That's why I'm going to buy it. As opposed to this much more sort of calculated, erudite sort of,
So I find that area of least interest to me, just because it's not building anything, it's not creating anything, it's not changing anything about the world. It's a bunch of rich people exchanging money over like objects that most people don't care about. Like, sure, like cool, but like it's the part of like. It's the part of and I think NFTs are really important. Don't get me wrong. Like NFTs are going to be the key to so many financial instruments that are coming. They're going to be, and like DeFi and NFTs are going to have a larger and larger overlap. But like the art world itself, is in itself an elite institution.
Right.
It is designed to be that because that's the only way in which it creates objects that are valuable is by being elite. You have to aspire to own a piece of art because it's all about positioning, it's all about status, and it's all about like creating that status out of that object.
Right.
But like in terms of like things that it helps society do or improve or change or build or
yeah. Well, let's talk about RDX and let's talk about Radix. I want to understand more for our audience. What is it fundamentally? What have you guys built? And what do you expect to come build on top of that?
Sure. Okay. So Radix is a public decentralized ledger, like Ethereum is a public decentralized ledger or Bitcoin is a public decentralized ledger. And these public decentralized ledgers have a token, and the purpose of the token is essentially to be able to pay to use the network. So pay for transaction fees or pay for if you want to call a smart contract, something like that, you have to pay for it. But Radix is what's called a proof of stake network. So you have to you can stake your tokens to secure the network, and you get paid extra tokens for doing that. And that creates the security of the network. Bitcoin is proof of work. And that's where the miners come in. Ethereum is in the process of changing over from proof of work to proof of stake. But Radix starts off as proof of stake. Now, with our public decentralized ledger, instead of it being general purpose, which is what everything that has come before is just a general purpose ledger, it focuses specifically on decentralized finance because we realize that decentralized finance is product market fit for these platforms. It is assets and objects of value that these networks really work for. Like if the internet is about information, then the decentralized ledger space is all about value, right? Like it's all about the superhighway for value. So we said, we don't care about other applications. We're going to zone in on decentralized finance specifically, and we're going to look at all of the things that is holding decentralized finance back. And there's two big things that are really holding decentralized finance back. The first is it's really expensive to use the ledgers at the moment. So anyone who's used Ethereum to try and do anything, right? The gas prices are insane. Yeah. And the reason the gas prices are insane is because these networks are congested. So one of the first things that we built Radix for was massive scale. However, we built it to scale specifically for decentralized finance. So like decentralized finance isn't just transactions. A lot of people go, I can do this many transactions per second. But actually that's not the important measure. It's like how many trades across Uniswap can you do per second? How many transactions can you do like when you're borrowing and lending or something like that, when you're doing something more complicated? So Radix has been optimized specifically for scalability for decentralized finance type things to make sure that problem of scalability, that problem of congestion is just never going to happen. However, what we discovered over the last 2 years of working with leading decentralized finance projects and leading decentralized finance developers is that the number one problem of the industry actually isn't scalability. The number one problem of the industry is that there are not enough developers available for these projects. And there is this massive shortage where like projects are competing with each other for this tiny pool of developers. Mm-hmm. And the reason that there's not many developers is because the main language that you program decentralized finance in is Solidity. It's this programming language that Ethereum created. And it is awful for decentralized finance. And to such an extent that it takes about 2 years for a developer to become competent enough that they can build applications that are secure, that can't get hacked. And even that, like we've had, DeFi's had like $1.5 billion of hacks in the last 18 months. Like all of that comes down to how bad Solidity is. And these are really smart people, right? These are not bad developers. These are really smart people building like really difficult stuff. So we were like, okay, cool. That's the problem to solve. That's the real problem. Let's get the next 100,000 developers into the Web3 space, into the DeFi space. But how do we do that? Well, what we have to do is we have to create a programming language specifically for building decentralized finance. That's called Scripto. We released it yesterday.
Wow. Congratulations.
just gone live, and it takes that time to talent from like 2 years to like 3 months. So if you're thinking about getting started building decentralized finance and you want a place to start, then I would 100% recommend Scripto, because it is just night and day compared to building with Solidity. And so like better, faster, cheaper, that's what it's all about. But it's really about that user experience for developers and empowering them to make the next Google of finance, the next Twitter of finance on top of Radix.
And what capabilities does it have that distinguishes it from Solidity, other than the obviously faster, cheaper, easier to learn? I mean, does it otherwise achieve exactly the same things?
Yeah, so in a very different way. So like what we started with is, so in programming, you have these things called paradigms, right? So you have object-oriented programming is one of the main paradigms in programming. You also have something called functional programming. What we've made Scripto around is this concept of asset-orientated programming. So the objects that you care most about to program are assets on top of a public ledger. And so the assets are actually fundamental components of the language itself, rather than things you have to define. Now, just to make this a bit simpler, when the games industry got started, the computer games industry, it was a cottage industry, and the games developers who built games didn't just build the game, they had to build everything, how the physics was defined, how the low level optimization for how it worked on the hardware. And so there was a few developers who were incredibly prolific, like John, what's his name? I'm going to forget his name. John Cormack, who created Doom, right? Okay. Like he was just this incredible prodigious developer. However, to be a games developer, you had to know the entire stack.
Right.
And so it was a cottage industry where very few developers were building, and 90% of their time was spent on defining the rules of physics, like what it meant to be a physical object, rather than building the game and the environment and the narrative and the story. And then the game changer came in 1998 and 2001, when Unreal Engine and Unity came in, and these were game engines for gaming. So instead of the game developer having to worry about defining the rules of physics, defining what it means to be an object, optimizing for different integrations and hardware so that you can run it on a phone or run it on an Xbox or whatever, you essentially got physics for free in the game engine. Now you could concentrate all of your time on building what it meant to be, Final Fantasy V or whatever it was, right? Yeah. What we've done is the same thing. We've created a game engine for finance called the Radix Engine, which sits underneath this programming language called Scripto. And it gives developers who want to build DeFi essentially just all of this stuff for free. Finance is a fundamental property of the ledger and of the language. And so you don't have to define things. You don't have to think about how you're passing calls between objects, what a swap is, or any of this stuff that in Solidity takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of code, and it's really difficult to read code. Whereas if you look at Solidity, even if you're a non-developer, you can sit down and you can read it. You can go, I understand what's going on here. I understand what's happening. And so that's the big difference, is that the orientation of the language is now asset oriented, which means that you have a different way of programming, thinking about things, which makes it way easier to program. And then you have all of this stuff that is predefined in the language, which means that you don't have to worry about defining what finance is and how a token works and how a swap works and all this kind of stuff.
Right. That sounds like not only revolutionary based on the way that you describe it, but also it's so helpful to understand how code works, because, as someone who's not a programmer myself, it is something that gets tossed around a lot. I know we have Solidity, we have Rust, and we have, all these various languages. But I don't think most people really understand what that means or how it works or what distinguishes one from the next, especially, on the consumer side. And people are still wandering around saying, like, we don't understand why Ethereum is so expensive. We don't understand the gas fees. Yeah. So thank you for that explanation. I think it's quite illuminating. I'm sure for many people listening right now. And so how do you get this out there? How do you get people developing on it?
Yeah. So that we have this concept inside Radix of building a movement versus building a flash mob. All communities start off small. All true communities start off small. You can organize a blitz of a large number of people coming together, but then they disperse. It's actually the communities that build and matter are the ones that start off with a core set of beliefs, and those beliefs then draw in people who also believe those things, and then it expands, right? And so our focus with Scripto, like we've got a year before Babylon, which is when we integrate the programming language into our mainnet. So our mainnet's already live, but you can't build DeFi on it. You can only build DeFi on it once Scripto becomes integrated into the mainnet. And so instead of rushing to that point, what we decided to do was focus really carefully on building that developer community, but building specifically the developer community that understands the importance of changing this paradigm, not just going immediately and copying, trying to go, oh, we're going to be the next Ethereum. The way we're going to be the next Ethereum is just copy Ethereum and just put it on a slightly better infrastructure. It's like, that's not how you actually fundamentally innovate. However, what we have to accept is, if we are going to change everything, we're going to change the way you build, we're going to change the execution environment, we're going to change the fee model, we're going to change the scalability, the consensus, all of that kind of stuff, right? Then you have to take a bit more time to teach people, right? And so that developer ecosystem that we've been building slowly over time, of just pulling these people in and just being like, look, this is just such a better way of building. And like, the response has been incredible. But I don't want 100,000 people who are slightly interested. I want 1,000 people who think this is the most incredible thing that's ever been built, because we think it's the most incredible thing that's ever been built. And the only way you change the world is by getting a group of those people together and starting to get them to take action on that. And that's our process. So if you go and join our Scripto channel in our Discord, you're not going to see thousands and thousands of people. You're going to see a few people who are incredibly excited about this thing and who are drawing in more people over time. And that's the movement that we care about building. That's where I see progress. And that's what we have the next year to do. And so it's all about, for me, giving people the opportunity to learn and develop and have fun. Like, it's not high stakes yet, right? Like, you can't actually deploy DeFi. This is about improving your understanding of the space and giving you the tools for success. But like, it's not about getting $1 million into liquidity tomorrow. It's about spending some time upskilling yourself with the community and getting to the point where you feel confident enough that you can actually build something of purpose and value. And I think that's what we're at the early stages of doing right now.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. How long have you guys been developing this? How long has the road been to this point?
So like, the history of Radix is long. Dan Hughes, the founder, started research in 2013 into scalability solutions for public ledgers, because he in 2012 he got into Bitcoin. And by 2013 was like, this is just not going to work for the world. It's just not going to work. It's not scalable enough. It's not flexible enough. It just needs to be better. And so he was like, oh, I think I could probably like smash something together in 6 months. And then like 7 years of research later, we got to the point where we created this consensus algorithm, Cerberus, which is the basis for our scalability on Radix. And I joined in 2017, and then started the process of like building out the team and working out what our sort of like bigger strategy was going to be over that. But yeah, 2013 was when this started, and you know, it's been a hell of a journey.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big week. How did we get so lucky to have you on today, the day after your release? This is wonderful. Well, I hope everyone listening is taking notes and, you know, energized around the idea. It looks like Meow is taking notes down there. Energized around the idea of coming and upskilling themselves, as you say, and finding your Discord for that purpose. And is this creating this programming language? Has that been the sole aim of RDX over time, or can you tell us, is there a broader suite of tools and applications?
Yeah, so like it's each level, right, of the stack. Like ultimately everything comes down to user experience. Like like why people fall in love with products and services is because it addresses a need that the user has. be that, a car or a house or an iPhone app or an iPhone itself. Like everything comes down to the user experience. And like our strongly held belief is that the user experience of finance is pretty bad.
Yeah.
The user experience of crypto is not great either. Don't get me wrong. You've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
But like the play here is the long-term play here is to increase the consumer choice. So the places that I can go to be able to get financial services and the user experience of finance, radically improve the user experience of finance. And in many ways, that's what the internet did for so many things. It just made everything more convenient, faster, more responsive, and in many ways created industries that just couldn't exist without it. And that's the same thing that's going to happen in DeFi, but it comes down to these empowering developers and really focusing on all of the things that are necessary to create a fantastic, great user experience. And so the programming language is one of them. The Radix Engine underneath it is another of them, to making sure that like assets are fundamental and it's just easy to compose them together. And there's lots of complex things as to why that's important. The scalability is another one. Like if you come to the platform and it costs you lots of money to use the platform, then it's going to be a bad user experience. Even if everything else is great, it's going to be expensive as about it. So you want to make sure that that's not a problem. And then going the other way, like regulation is going to come at some point to this space. We've built Instapass, which is a full stack regulatory compliance tool that you can, as a developer, if you want to, integrate it into your decentralized finance application so that you can also do regulatory compliance stuff as well. You do KYC, AML, and like all of this stuff that is important for the next level of finance. So like we're still in the sort of like the retail level of finance, but when you start getting institutional, when you start getting global, like you get to a point where where institutions are like, I can't put money in this unless I can actually attest to the regulatory compliance nature of it, because that's the rules I operate under. If you're a licensed financial institution, a hedge fund or something like that, then that starts to be a problem for you. So we want to make sure the user experience of finance is as easy as possible. That includes the difficult stuff as well. So we've built those tools. And then the last part of that is actually building on top of it. So building an interface, building like the stack that sits at the front end. So if you're then
the stuff we see.
The stuff we see. So that's coming. Like that, we have some strong opinions about how we can make that better. Like everything from how you can make MetaMask, like experiences like MetaMask better, to wallet recovery better, to actual interfaces on top of websites better. And we've got a load of tools that we're thinking about right now that I'm sure we'll see the light of day later down the line. But this is a multi-year journey, and it goes all the way down the stack and all the way up the stack. Everything from the very front end of how you interact to literally how the banking system interacts with the global financial economy. Like everything has to integrate fully, and like that's going to be decades in the making. And we're here for that journey, and we're just making sure that we're hitting the right next bit of it. And right now, developer user experience is it. And then next it's going to be consumer user experience. And then on from there, everything else.
That feels right. That feels good. So as someone who has as much experience focused in a very, very specific aspect of crypto, being DeFi, and who's been in the game a long time, who comes to it with your background and expertise, what do you believe are going to be the next trends in decentralized finance, based on where we're at right now and what's coming? Like, what are some new products that you can envision or imagine?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I think that there's a few things that are sort of emerging. One of which is protocol owned liquidity. So this idea that we started with this, the DeFi started with this idea that the consumer could provide liquidity, or that an end user could provide capital to an application and get paid for doing so that that application could become a better, more liquid place. So like on Uniswap, which is a decentralized exchange, providing two sides of the market of, USDC and Ethereum to a Uniswap pool, and then every time someone trades across that pool, you earn some of the fees.
Right.
That's end user provided liquidity, or in Aave, like putting some USDC in so that can be lent out to the market. That's that. What seems to be coming down the line is this concept of protocol owned liquidity. So where a decentralized finance application over time acquires more and more liquidity that the application itself owns. There is no no person who actually owns a share of it. Okay. And that creates this steadily ratcheting up, like guaranteed level of liquidity that exists on the protocol. That seems to be a trend of like how you build things. It's not necessarily a particular application area, but that seems to be interesting. And I think Ohm DAO and a couple of other things are like really.
I was going to say there's been a real trend in Ohm forks lately, but also obviously Ohm has had quite a year. And I think there are a lot of, I remember actually when it launched, and to be frank, I looked at it and I was like, I don't really understand what this is. It actually went a little bit over my head, unfortunately. But I'm now, much more conscious and much more informed about how these work. And I'm seeing people start to switch on. Like at first it's a challenge to switch from really straightforward spot trades into something that's actually just so layered and complex, but they also seem to be really, really popular right now.
Right. I mean, it's just a way of like stacking it's all about that capital efficiency. So you start off with a token, you go from a token like USDC to an LP share like something in Curve, and then you're able to reformat that into something else, and then you're able to take that result and then reformat that into something else that just creates more and more return for you. So like it's like a concept of leverage, but it's like leveraging the liquidity rather than necessarily the leverage that we would normally think about when you come to trading to jack your returns. So that I think that's a trend that's going to continue. The other thing that I think is going to become more and more important is going to be stable coins in more currencies. So one of the things that I always talk about is that money is not a global phenomenon, it's a local phenomenon. Mm-hmm. Like most people don't, like if you talk to the everyday person on the street in the UK or in Switzerland and you say, what currency do you want to invest in? They'll say pound, obviously. And like in Switzerland, Swiss franc, obviously. And in Japan, the yen, obviously. Like it's only a small proportion of the population who thinks outside of their own currency, because the currency is a shortcut for value exchange. It's how you think every single day when you go into the shop. You go, I look at that and I know that price, and that's instantly I'm able to kind of go, is that cheap or expensive or whatever? And it saves a huge amount of cognitive load, right? And the cognitive load that's currently presented by the dollarization of DeFi essentially is everyone who is not American. It constantly creates this cognitive load, and the less familiar you are with the international markets, the more cognitive load it creates, and the less familiar and comfortable it feels just to put your money into it. So that localization is going to be massively important to getting the next sort of like wave of people in, so that people can just be like, oh, I can invest in the currency of my country. That's cool. But like, there's a load of liquidity issues that need to be solved. There's a couple of things that like Abracadabra Money plus the Yearn guys, Andre Cronje, are doing that is looking quite interesting around that. I still think that derivatives are going to be a big thing in DeFi at some point, because derivatives allow you to create like representative instruments on ledger that are, you don't have the underlying for, which just seems to be a good way of doing it. The main problem is that most people, like, there's always a pricing problem in derivatives, and there's always a liquidity problem, and like, normally what would happen is you would have a market maker who would be like working out what price they will sell a derivative at and keeping a constant like risk tally based on that. Right. And like bonding curves and liquidity pools have not yet come up with really good ways of creating like priced derivatives where both sides, where there's good supply side and good demand side, and there's good trading. Like DYDX is doing some cool stuff. Perp is doing some cool stuff, although they're like CFM, AMM based model. Last time I looked at it, like had some problems. Then there's, potion finance guys who I think are awesome, like some really clever maths behind it. But again, like still not sure where that like supply, where that shelling point between the sort of the market side and the supply side is going to come. But like once that's worked out, huge amount of opportunity there as well, because it expands the asset universe that's available on top of these public ledgers.
Right. That's insightful. Thank you for that. So Piers, we have a special guest that we're going to bring on to the show. He's joining us from a faraway land. And we would now like to welcome our colleague, Meow, to come in with some audience questions, some of his own questions.
Hello, comrades. Yeah, my name is Meow, but I'm not actually a cat. I'm a vodka fuel cat. All right. So I'm switching off that stupid accent, which I love and hate to do. All right. And, before the show, before the show, I normally do some research about the project which will come here, right? And when I was looking on RDX by accident, I just typed RDX without crypto. And the first thing it gave me is, I'm going to quote from Wikipedia, right? RDX abbreviation from Royal Demolition Explosive. developed by Great Britain during World War II. So, Piers, your project is a bomb.
That's right.
Literally. Okay.
That's right. That's amazing. I never even knew that. Look at that.
that the power we have here. Okay. That's why it's comedy relief. Right. So before we go to the blitz, and I actually have just 2 questions instead of three normally, right? I would ask you the question for Twitter we got during the podcast, right? What is the difference between the currency of Ethereum chain and Binance Smart Chain, and what the relationship between them? It's like
sure. So like the Ethereum chain has ETH, and then the Binance Smart Chain has BNB, and Binance Smart Chain is a fork of ETH. So they copied the code that Ethereum is based on, and then they created their own network with their own nodes, and you have to use BNB to pay for the use of Binance Smart Chain instead of ETH. They are basically the same software, but 2 different public networks run by 2 different groups of people. And you need ETH to pay for the Ethereum network, and you need BNB to pay for the Binance Smart Chain network.
Okay, thank you. Next, by the way, question comes from Aras Big Ups, and I'm actually going to pull the screen because it's about my hair, right? Do they have scissors? All right. Comrade, no. To cut your hair, we use axe, just like a real man, or like Canadians. They're good too. This is what happens when you live in cold country, dog. All right. And also we have and even before podcast, the questions were coming here. All right. The questions were coming here. There was a lot of questions. And the biggest one was about your bomber jacket.
My bomber jacket.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of questions coming about a bomber jacket. What's that about?
We need to solve this mystery, okay?
We got this bomber jacket made for the release of Alexandria. I didn't wear it today. For Alexandria was our mainnet release for the first version of the public network, Radix public network, and they're awesome. And I should have worn it, like black bomber jacket, white arms, sell Alexandria on the back, 21 on the front, and then Radix on the lapel. It's fucking awesome.
Can you show it to us? Or it's like too far away? Come on, we want to see. Community wants it.
Oh my god.
Community
Jesus
wants
Christ.
it. Okay. That wasn't so strategic.
You managed to clear the room.
Yes. That wasn't so strategic to do, Chat is gonna blow up right now. By the way, chat, while we have time, we have to talk. All right? We have to talk. Where are your questions?
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
Oh, get.
This was quite the move. I mean, this is the first time that a guest has actually left the chair to satisfy a request. Wow.
I'm a people pleaser. What can I say?
Yeah, that is a wonderful jacket.
They're great. It was just like so. This is for the year it was done. There's the Radix logo, and then on the can I do the back? I'm not sure I can do the back.
Yeah, we got it. It's in frame. It's in frame. That's a very well designed jacket. If your code is as well designed as that jacket, I think we're in luck.
And so just not just bomber, right, but the perfect hair. And regarding back to the Caesars, you dare to challenge my hair?
I don't dare to challenge your hair. Your hair is
awful. I know.
You win the hair competition.
I honestly need some. It's cold here, right? So, and also this classical challenge, we ask it a lot of times here, and I'm gonna ask it again. Bitcoin next year, where?
So if we stay, I mean, not financial advice, my opinion only. I think if we stay above 45,000 over Christmas, we're likely to see a rally in January and February, and I think that we should touch. My expectation is that we'll touch 100,000 Bitcoin over 100,000 before it drops. I don't know how far it's going to drop, but but I just don't think we've seen the full run of Bitcoin yet. However, every single bull market looks different, and every single bear market looks different. Like, that's kind of the whole point, is like they only look obvious in retrospect. And so many conflicting signals are coming through at the moment. However, I do think the health of the global economy is massively important overall as the main macro trend that matters, because what people often forget, and I've said this quite a lot, what people often forget is Bitcoin is risk on capital. It's not risk off capital. I know there's lots of people in the crypto space who are like, Bitcoin is the best inflation hedge. It's where money will escape to because it's the best hard money. That's not actually what it is right now to the majority of the financial market, and actually the majority of capital that's in Bitcoin and is moving the market. So if the financial market tanks, if the global economy tanks, it's also going to tank Bitcoin, in my opinion, as well. So we need a continued good economic growth through early next year, and then I think we'll see as a continuation of the rise of Bitcoin.
Okay, honestly, that was the most developed and hard answer we had for a while. I mean, I really liked it, actually. Yeah. And we have one more suggestion from the community. Meanwhile, just come on, guys, ask your questions. All right. It comes from Anton van Poppel, and it's actually a great one.
Piers for president of what country?
I was going to say he's a little bit British for the job, but we'll take him. We're into this borderless thing.
Don't want to be president. Honestly, politics seems like the worst possible thing. Just seems like the worst possible thing. Followed closely by sometimes running DAOs looks awful as well. So so there's a combination of everything in politics feels like the least thankful task you can possibly do. Mm-hmm. And I think that I would be insane if I ever went into politics.
Piers, okay, not president. Let's make a deal. Prime Minister, okay? Prime Minister.
No fucking way. No way.
Actually, I have a question about, the sort of the crypto culture in Britain, which because I feel like each country has a very different sort of attitude towards it. And I find for some reason a lot of the headlines that come out of Britain to be quite anti-crypto. That
makes no sense. Honestly, you have left the European Union. The entire financial industry is on its way out of London, and moving to Amsterdam and moving to Frankfurt, as it quite rightly should.
Right.
And you are still anti-crypto? Like, no, this is like you have currently right now, you have some of the best finance developers in the world, some of the best financial minds in the world, and they're currently losing their positions in their companies because the companies are moving all their assets out of England. Yeah. And now you have your own legislation that you can decide to make your country attractive to people to build crypto in your country. Plus, many of the leading DeFi projects are coming out of London. Aave are London-based products. And like the DeFi industry, like the DeFi community, the Ethereum community is great in London. There is this opportunity that they are missing in being anti-crypto. Like the FCA's attitude towards crypto with their crypto asset regime and their registration process and all that kind of stuff is unbelievably like weird how they've decided to do it. So yeah.
As a Russian, I can back this up because just today, Central Bank of Russia said that we're gonna ban crypto, but you didn't see what comes next, right? We received it on the Russian channels. Reuters didn't post it, right? It said like we have two plans: or we're gonna completely legalize crypto, or we're gonna ban it. Yeah. Nothing in the middle, just nothing completely void, nothing.
Yeah, it's bizarre though, because I spent some time in England, and it was also like it just seemed like the general sentiment on the ground was just very uninformed. It felt like a little bit behind the times and a little anti. And I was like, this is because I feel like in America there's actually a pretty, you can feel the adoption growing, you can feel the enthusiasm around it, and anyone who's not in it is like, how do I get in it?
So the way that Americans do business, I think, is one of the best countries in the world in their attitude towards business. Like newness is embraced as opportunity, change is embraced as opportunity. Like everything is about there is a celebration of entrepreneurialism. There is a celebration of wealth creation. Like if you've done well in America, like good on you. Yeah. In England, often if you're wealthy, people are like, well, who did you steal that from? Like, who did you screw over to do that? And so it's a really interesting attitude difference between. Is it same in Russia? Yeah. Okay.
Come on, I'm gonna shake your hand through the camera.
But also, but also, there's a different context in Russia.
Right.
Yeah, there's
I mean, people are actually.
Are you in government?
Acquiring each other's property. But Piers is right. London, not so much London, but England on the whole, it's like there's a lot of that, sort of like really old money and that old wealth. And it's sort of like if you don't come from a family that has that, they're like, well, how'd you get it? Like,
so there's a really interesting joke. It's not even a joke. It's just a story that is often repeated in like entrepreneurial circles, which is the difference between the legal agreements for investment into startups in America, England, and Russia. So in America, the contract for investment says, how are we going to make money together? Right? In England, it says, how are you going to make money for me? In Russia, it says, how are you going to screw me?
What's funny? What's funny right now? What's funny right now is that perfectly fits here because when this is from America, your peers from Britain and me from Russia, just perfectly fits here. But also, I don't want to get deep into politics, right? But Russia and Britain regarding wealth and wealthy people are very close together, especially the amount of Russians living in London.
Right.
Yeah.
There is also that. We could go on for a while here.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that to Piers. He's a busy man with a busy schedule. But we'd love to have you back. I mean, this was a really, really wonderful and informative conversation. And really speaks to the heart of a lot of the things that we're doing here as well in terms of developing new and innovative DeFi products and tools. Your new code sounds amazing. I'm really excited to see, people adopt that and get involved. And I feel like there are probably like multiple chapters that we could cover. And I think, we could do a whole episode just on the user experience layer of the stack. That sounds like it's coming next. But as for today, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for, sharing your thoughts and opinions. Congratulations on what sounds like a very long and I'm sure complicated road to get to your launch yesterday. This is a very momentous moment. And I can tell just from the comments, that you've got a really robust community. It sounds like you've got a pretty strong following just based on how hyped these comments are. So I can tell you've cultivated that very carefully.
Thank you very much,
yeah.
and thank you so much for having me, and thank you for some great questions and some great discussion. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
it's our pleasure. You're welcome back anytime. We'll talk to you soon.